Hey everybody, it's Paul Sian here and Wollet here again, back for another podcast. Had a few good episodes in the past there. Got a good episode today. We're going to be talking about the owner occupancy fraud. It's been hot in the political spotlight. Mainly there's some back and forth going between the Federal Reserve and the presidency. Basically, they're looking for some reduced interest rates to kind of help spur the economy along, whereas the Federal Reserve is looking at different data or different scenarios, and they're holding rates steady so far. So we'll see how that plays out. But before we even talk anything about rates, let's talk about the owner occupancy. And this is something that Walt has a good knowledge base on, a good experience with. He's been doing how many years you been doing mortgages, Walt?
I think I'm in year 10 already,
Nice.
Paul.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I definitely, and first of all, grateful and thankful to be back here, and excited about this topic from the vantage of an insider. I think I have a lot I could say. And one big thing about fraud, obviously, is intent. And that's why as a mortgage professional, we want, as part of our process, clients to input their own information into the application. And if we're changing something structurally, down payment or whatever it is, we obviously are very serious about documenting all of that. Because fraud, it has a huge definition when you look it up in Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac's dictionary, and there's a lot of things that really define fraud.
But yeah, with the owner occupancy fraud, and I've seen too, looking at especially on the investment side. I work on the real estate side and seeing some of these coaches, especially, will counsel their buyers that, with I guess the main one of the main benefits of doing the owner occupied is you get a much lower mortgage rate, and so they even go to the extent that they'll even tell their homeowners insurance company, because with a homeowners insurance policy, if it's owner occupied, you're going to be paying less versus if you're saying, hey, it's a rental property, the rate is different and the coverage is going to be different. With the homeowners insurance, they're going to say, yeah, that's fine. We'll cover your property. It's probably going to be higher, but they're not covering everything, say whatever's inside the house. So a lot of times there's a desire to say, not, to fudge the lines, not tell the truth and say, hey, yeah, it's owner occupied and I want the lower mortgage rate and I want the lower insurance policy. But the problem becomes is if that's discovered, as we were talking here prior just to getting online here, you were mentioning about some experiences you had with on the lending side too, with owner occupancy. You want to share those examples?
Yeah. And I just like you said, really. And one thing when we're analyzing deals and when we're looking at it, we want to see, what the break even is. Right? Or so if somebody is really using something as an investment property and they put 5% down on it, their interest rate is going to be a lot lower. Their payment might, it's not going to be comparable, right? When you look at the 20% down, but then their break even, instead of it being, 2 years, 3 years, right, to recuperate that capital they put down, they're recuperating that capital within, a few months. So it is cheating. And the reason the issue with it is, when you sign that mortgage, you're saying, hey, I'm going to occupy this usually within 60 days. I'm going to move in and I'm going to live there for a year, at least, right? That's what the terms are. And we have seen people that, haven't, they haven't had that intention, but they're going for that owner occupancy loan. And if that happens, we have to step in and just say, look, we can't do this, and we can't help you given this scenario, because we know that you're not really going to live there. We know that this is a home that you plan on, even if you plan on renting it out to family, you're renting it. Um, so there's a lot of cases where I think people try to play or cheat the system, and with AI and with some of the technology that's coming online, that lenders and agencies have, it's really not worth the risk at all, because it really is a quick email or a quick phone call for somebody that knows what they're doing to put a stop to that whole scheme and that whole scam. So it's hurting investors because they're thinking, hey, we're giving this person that's going to own or occupy it and their family better terms because they're going to occupy it, they're going to own it, but that's not true. So essentially the whole process is invalid, and it really shakes the confidence of the whole market,
Yeah.
which is the same thing with the fact that this would come up in the Federal Reserve. You know my opinions, Paul. And my I've read up quite a bit of history on the Federal Reserve, and I I think it's a bigger issue. Everything that's going on between the executive branch and the Epstein things and the Federal Reserve, governors committing fraud, and this is being spoken about. And what are younger people, right, or up and coming people supposed to see when the highest positions in government are just lying?
Yeah.
So that's the problem. And it can't be. It really, there really has to be a set moral standard enforced for everybody, regardless of what their position is. And so I think in this day and age, that's the bigger thing. So it's just, hey, we're not, you know I think Democrats and Republicans, right, there's people on both sides that commit fraud, and it's a problem. So it's not a political problem, but it is a great issue because it just takes away confidence. Makes our bonds more expensive, right? Or makes our bonds, to where it's more expensive for American homeowners. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to that kind of the expensive part too. And part of the incentive for that, the low down payment for owner occupied is that, that we want to get those first time young home buyers, get them into a house, they can start their family, they can, you know, build a nice little life for themselves in a home. But we're allowing investors to say cut it in front of the line, cheat, they're instead, rather than this house going to a family, they're putting a low down payment in there, and then they're using that to, rent it out to somebody. So there's some stability questions there. How long is a tenant's going to stay? I mean, yeah, sometimes some tenants stay forever. Other times, though, they might be more transitional, and especially if they start doing those like the Airbnbs. I've heard a lot of complaints in neighborhoods too, in certain areas that hey, they're always having parties in these Airbnbs, and that's disrupting the neighborhood. So it's basically it's an unfair thing for the for the person looking to buy a home, or even the local neighbor there who's now suddenly facing this investor purchases property. They thought they can make big bank on as an Airbnb, and they paid the least amount of money possible, so they have low risk into it there too, versus the where it's the actual you want to invest in that. This investing in real estate is not a small time game. You need to have the capital, and you need to have those reserves in there. But when you come in there as owner occupied, the lenders don't look at that. They kind of say, okay, this is owner occupied. You don't necessarily need all those reserves, the amount of reserves that you would need as an investor. And your down payment is much smaller too. And even in the case if you claim you're not even claim, let's say you qualify as a veteran, you claim owner occupancy when you're not, you're doing investment, you can do a zero down in there. And even some USDAs, the same thing, you can do a zero down.
Yeah, and I just think the concern is that there's 100% organizations that are, field investigators that they will deploy, that will go out and double check that. And specifically on VA FHA loans, there's no such thing as an investment or second home when it comes to those products. It's just not. It's never been a thing, and it never will be. And the only option when you're talking about investment properties, 30-year fixed, is Fannie and Freddie conventional, and that has interest rate hits because it's riskier, and it also has more of a down payment requirement, which because it's riskier, because the investors are fronting know that they're fronting for putting up money for an investment property where someone is not going to live there with their family, right? So they're not gonna live there. They're gonna rent it out, right? The person that's coming and staying there doesn't really have ownership. They might have owners, they might stay there for a day or a month or a year, like you said, Paul. And at the end, what's going to be the condition of the property? So if some of these rental homes, it's a tough game because of what tenants can do. So you do an owner occupied home and then they destroy it and you have no equity to for the bank to get their money back.
Yeah.
So, that's where you end up with, banks failing because they make so many, they make all these sorts of loans and they don't do their due diligence, right, making sure that, yeah, this is somebody that's actually going to occupy this. So, and really it's just you got to put people that know about fraud and people that have pushed fraud. You actually have to do something to them. So not like in 2008, right, where all these guys are out here still walking around. You actually got to put people in prison,
Yeah.
and I think that's where the political will is a problem, I think, because it's both sides are guilty of these sorts of transgressions. So
Yeah. It's kind of gotten to the point too where it's, the higher up you are, they play by the rules that, the laws don't necessarily apply to us. Let it slide. But now we're seeing kind of both sides engage in this too. They both kind of throw slime at each other, dirt at each other, but at the same time too, they're doing the underhanded things, doing the illegal things. Whereas, the everyday person, you go do something like that, you're likely to, you can go to jail, you lose your credit, even worse. So there's a lot of downsides for that. So that's something with even going back to and talking about the insurance part of that too. A lot of these, if they're putting the insurance that it's owner occupied, they're getting the lower rates. And then let's say something does happen, like you said, the tenant destroys the property, they forget to turn off their fireplace or something, and the house burns down. Now, if the insurance company finds out, guess what they're going to do? They're going to deny that policy. And then they can even turn around and say, hey, go to the local prosecutor and say, hey, this person filed a false insurance claim. Not only filed a false insurance claim, but they also got insurance under misrepresented facts. Basically, they said they're owner occupied. It's not owner occupied. So then, not only you're out your investment money, out your whatever equity you might have built there, you're going to be out of your freedom too if the prosecution decides, hey, this is a serious case. Not only was it, they lied on the insurance, if people got injured, worse too, then they're just going to splash you on the front page and make an example of you.
very much. And I would honestly, with, like I said, with technology and with everything happening as it is, I would expect more of that. Absolutely.
Yeah,
And it's very hard, right, to prove intent, but I think there's so many, speaking from experience at different banks and different mortgage companies, I I think I could walk into certain places right now and catch fraud. um, in various degrees in various forms. And it's really, could be anything as simple as, oh, having people sign as customers, right? Like lock information sheets, and then using that to lock a loan. Even things like that, that could or may be internal, right? Are not good practices in mortgage lending. And with the technology, being able to track IP addresses, being able to see, hey, when was this application influenced, or what happened, they're absolutely going to catch it.
yeah,
And so people might get away with it for a little while, or they might have, sort of a weird situation that makes it hard to track. um but at the end of the day, they when the intent is obvious, right, the costs are so different, and all they have to do is say, yeah, you sign this as an you sign this as an owner occupant, and then you skirted on that obligation. You stayed where you were at, and this hit the market within 15 days of you closing. There's not going to be any way you can argue an extenuating circumstance, once it gets to a certain point.
yeah.
So It's easier to just follow the rules in life, especially when it comes to this, because they're there to protect. It's there to protect the market. It's there to protect investors. And if we don't have investors, Americans don't have 3% down home loans anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, some of that rot that comes into the system there, it impacts everybody. These days, we're seeing a lot with the younger generations too being priced out of homes. So we've kind of bid up these houses, calling them investments. When, in my opinion, I don't know that you necessarily call them an investment. It's, especially considering how much money you have to put into the house. If you're looking at a new HVAC system, a new roof, or whatnot, that's quite a bit of money, and you're continually paying. Your taxes go up. You're paying all this maintenance. It's not as investment like as some other assets are. I mean, it's like an asset that you can build equity in it, you can build value in it as you're paying over time. And but when you look at the amount of, especially on a rates that we have today, you see the interest rates. I mean, the how much interest you pay over the life of that loan. Let's say if you stay there the entire 30 years, but it's a huge portion of money. So it's not necessarily like, versus you go buy some other type of asset. You go buy, say, a stock that pays a dividend. That's actually paying you money back. I would consider that more of as an investment, investment asset versus your home is more of it's a place to go home, go sleep, relax, hang out with your friends, family, whatnot. It's not, we're not shouldn't be treating these as investment in my mind, but that's part of the problem we got to the society level over here is like, hey, people aren't selling now as you could similar like a stock. I mean, most people aren't going to sell their stock if the price keeps going up. Same thing with houses. People are just sitting on these houses. They maybe there's not even any fraud involved, but I bought a first house here for, just a made up example. I bought a first house over here. I want to buy another house, kind of rolled my equity over in there, kept that house over there, whether I rented it out or just left it vacant. There's no incentive to sell because next year the price is even higher. The year after that, the price is even higher. So that kind of disincentivizes people to move those houses. So while there's this claim that there's less, there's not enough inventory, not enough homes for people. I think when you look at all these investment properties, when you look at a lot of these vacant properties that are sitting out there, I think the fact is there is plenty of inventory. It's just not actively used. And there are different ways, whether I've seen, like, I think it was in Vancouver, there's a lot of foreign investment money coming from China. They lock up these vacant homes just because they want to get their money out of China. So then, to a small extent, then the government there over there in Vancouver said, okay, we're going to start taxing these higher level for a vacant home versus those who are living in a home, just to kind of incentivize other people to, okay, yeah, we'll either rent it out or we'll just sell it and let somebody who wants to live in there do it. Somebody who wants to live in there stay in there and then pay the lower taxes.
and that's a good point as far as people moving money into real estate as a shelter. We're moving. It's a way really to get money, in the example you gave, out of China and into the Canadian economy. Um, and I think that's a big thing that is happening and does crowd out first time home buyers. One thing you brought up about taxes as well, which we didn't mention talking about fraud, but when you own or occupy something, you do have a lower tax rate. And so that's a bigger issue too, is because tax fraud is, you know, that's inherent in what in if someone commits owner occupancy fraud, they're going to have lower taxes, right, than somebody somebody that uses that as an investment property and does the loan that way. So yeah, there's a lot of in the general market. I say there's a lot of there's a lot of examples of what not to do. Um, and I think unfortunately the bigger thing with the government, instead of them fighting each other over politics, right, and should rates go up or down, they really need to focus on giving young people hope. And I right before our video, I saw someone had commented about a rent in the United Kingdom, right? And they're an American, and they said, oh well, this person had gone to the bank in the United Kingdom to get a loan, and the bank refused them. They couldn't qualify for something, a payment that was lower than what their rent was. So this person had commented on that, and that is the case in the UK or in Ireland or Russia or other places, but it's not the case here. And
Right.
if we don't protect, if we don't do anything to fight fraud, so if we totally just gut the CFPB and get rid of the regulators, you will have fraud, and you will not have the same demand as what we currently do, which is what keeps rates controllable, right?
Yeah.
So that's the bigger issue is these people need to all clean up their act, and they need to be examples, and there needs to be people that are made examples. So if it is in fact that Mrs. Cook, right, claimed owner occupancy on multiple properties, then the FBI needs to go after her. um Similar to a lot of different things right now, where it just seems like the media is trying to show that, hey, if you reach a certain level or you have money, there's just no accountability for those people. And I think that there is accountability, because there's people like me and there's people like us that are watching this, and we fucking hate people that do that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, it needs to be definitely needs to be a shift. We need to remind the politicians that they serve our interests. We're voting for them. We're sending them there. They shouldn't be serving the moneyed interests, which unfortunately is where we've come today. And so with that, that's where we see a lot of this corruption. There, a lot of this graft, where it's okay. Hey, I can go do that. Nobody's going to say anything to me. Or if they do, it's just a slap on the wrist, and I get to keep whatever ill-gotten gains I got out of it. Whereas the rest of everybody else, they're kind of pigeonholed down, forced down, and some are struggling day to day to meet even living places, food in a lot of places. So it's a rough situation for many.
definitely. And I would just say, though, that when there's a will, there's a way. And so long as people, um they look for people who are honest and who are going to speak truth to them, then I think they're going to be better off. And I just don't know how someone could, in a position like that. What is shocking to me is that they wouldn't know better, right? And
Yeah,
but when you look at the whole array of them, it's kind of just systemic, right? It almost feels like it's just disgusting and corrupt. And I think that we need young leadership at the end of the day that's going to actually hold people accountable and be honest. So
yeah,
that's what I'm kind of hoping for the future of this country.
yep. It's something that we both talk about a lot. We both share within our circles a lot, and trying to focus on it within our daily lives too. Is you know, we ethics above else. Ethics above making that money, making that last dollar. We want to help people as well too, and then same time then make an honest living. So I think that's why you and I met, and we still talk, we still hang out. It's because that we share those same values, and hopefully then it's something that's spreading pretty quickly around the US.
I think it is. And I just think it's important for people not to get disillusioned, and that's why I commented on that post, right? Because it's like, dude, you can buy a house, right? Like you can do it, right? So you're complaining about this, and that's somewhere else, right? And I know it seems hopeless sometimes, but if you make a plan and you go to work, you can do it. So that's what I'd say. Think about the crazy thing about Mrs. Cook, right? Is think about that. Like she is in charge of like what you pay for your groceries, what you pay for your mortgage, what you pay for your car, right? And look at her, right? So this is America. Anybody can get up there.
Yeah.
So and I think there's a lot of people out there that you know, um, they don't care about right? Like they just don't, like, I do not care about where someone went to school or what they look like or anything else, because it has to be about values at the end of the day. And are we, are our values the same? And I think for us they are, Paul. But as you
Yeah.
know, there's a lot of people out there that, they will put, they will put themselves ahead of doing the right thing. And I don't know if it's just a different spiritual development that they've been on, but you
Yeah.
know
It's a question. Good question for another day.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that was a great conversation. We can start wrapping it up over here. Do you got any last few thoughts you want to share?
Nope, just don't commit fraud. Don't be like them, right? Like, just be honest and say what it is. And this is, I'm actually going to live here. Or, hey, how do I want to buy this as an investment property? How do I do it? Do not try to do not try to get past the lenders, right? Don't.
Yeah.
Because they banks have a lot of money. They have attorneys on staff. They have investigators they can call. You will not get away with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, along with going on the right line, I was had a conversation today too with somebody's same type of thing, buying a house, and I told them part of part of life is just building resiliency. You need to be resilient in whether it's your emotional health, your spiritual health, your financial health. So yeah, maybe it's tough at this point to buy that house, but you just need to kind of start lining things up, start looking at things. And perfect example for this is I just help a young couple close on a house, and the way that actually happened is I was actually working with their mother, and so she was interested in buying a house, and then later on she decided, hey, my daughter said that she would like to live with us, and so maybe there's something where you can find where there's multiple buildings on the land, and sure enough, we found perfect little 5-acre lot here in kind of the central part of Ohio, not too far from here. It had a main house on it, and also had a trailer on it, so it was perfect. The mother is like, "Hey, I'm gonna stay in the trailer. My daughter, my son-in-law, and her grandkids, they'll go stay in the house over there." And he needed some work, but it's a perfect setup for them. And then she's even got space, enough land over there that her other kids can come. She's got another daughter and her boyfriend. They like to go trailering around, and she was like, "Yeah, they can come park their trailer on the property there. Nobody's going to say anything." They got a big happy family, and the son-in-law was even saying, the client was my client was the mother, and so she was saying my son-in-law was getting emotional the other day. He's like, Mom, I couldn't have been able to do this. They're young, very young couple living in some of the rougher parts of Dayton, and just saying, I don't think I could have done this without your help. And so now they've got a house, they've got a nice quiet. He was day before closing, he was commenting, the night before in his apartment there in Dayton, he heard gunfire and he hears people fighting all the time. And so I was like, that's why I want to come over here, because we just stood there for a second, it's quiet. And so then he's got a good place for his kids to stay and live and grow up. And so just build that resiliency. You got to look for more than one avenue. Open your mind, open your eyes, and then I think the whole world could improve with that strategy.
Absolutely. Amen
All
to
right.
that, Paul.
All right, great conversation. We're going to end it here and see you next time.
Have a great week.